The knock came just as Owen Prescott was skinning his third rabbit of the morning, and it startled him so badly he nearly cut his own thumb clean through. Nobody came up to his cabin, not in the 8 years he had been living on this mountain in northern New Mexico territory, 5 miles outside of Santa Rosa. The year was 1882, and most folks had the good sense to stay in town where the railroad brought civilization and commerce, not trudge up a rocky mountain path to bother a man who clearly wanted to be left alone. Owen wiped his bloody hands on his leather apron and grabbed his rifle from beside the door, though he did not aim it when he pulled the heavy wooden door open. Standing on his rough-hewn porch was a woman, and not just any woman, but one who looked like she had been dragged behind a horse for the better part of a day. Her dark hair had escaped whatever pins had once held it, streaming wild around her shoulders. Her traveling dress, once a respectable blue cotton, was torn at the hem and covered in dust, but it was her eyes that stopped him, green as spring grass and bright with barely contained panic. "Please," she said, her voice rough. "I need directions back to Santa Rosa. I have been walking since dawn and I fear I am hopelessly lost." Owen lowered his rifle completely, leaning it against the inside wall. "You walked up here from the main road. I took what I thought was a shortcut." She glanced behind her as if expecting something to emerge from the pine forest. "My horse threw a shoe yesterday evening, and I had to leave her at a ranch about 10 miles south. The woman there said Santa Rosa was due north, but clearly my sense of direction failed me. Due north would have taken you straight up the mountain, which is exactly what you did." Owen studied her more carefully now. She was young, probably around 23 or 24, and despite the dishevelment, there was a determined set to her jaw that spoke of inner strength. "You running from something or toward something?" "I do not see how that is your concern," she replied, lifting her chin. "I only need directions, and then I will be out of your way. Santa Rosa is about 8 miles northeast from here, but the path down this mountain is treacherous if you do not know it. The sun will be setting in about 4 hours, and you will never make it before dark." Owen stepped back from the doorway. "You should come in, have some water and food, and I will draw you a map." The woman hesitated, her eyes darting from him to the dark interior of the cabin and back again. He understood her caution. A lone woman in the wilderness had every reason to be wary of a strange man, especially one who looked like he did. Owen knew he cut an imposing figure at 6 feet 3 inches, with a thick dark beard and hair that brushed his shoulders. His clothes were rough homespun and buckskin, and he probably smelled like the rabbits he had been cleaning. "I give you my word I mean you no harm," he added. "My mother raised me better than to hurt a woman." Something in his tone must have convinced her, because she nodded slowly and stepped over the threshold. Owen gestured to the single chair at his rough table while he went to the water barrel and dipped out a cup of cool water. She drank it like a woman dying of thirst, and he refilled it twice before she finally set the cup down with a shaky exhale. "Thank you," she said. "My name is Lily Anderson. Owen Prescott." He moved to the fireplace where a pot of stew had been simmering since morning. "You need food." "When did you last eat?" "Yesterday afternoon." Lily watched him ladle stew into a wooden bowl. "You live up here alone?" "For the past 8 years." Owen set the bowl in front of her along with a spoon he hoped was reasonably clean. "I prefer the company of mountains to people." Lily ate with admirable restraint, though he could tell she wanted to devour the food. As she ate, Owen moved back to his workbench and began sketching a map on a piece of birch bark with a charcoal pencil. He marked the major landmarks, the safe paths down the mountain, and the most direct route to Santa Rosa. "Why did you come up here?" Lily asked between bites. 8 years is a long time to be alone." Owen did not look up from his map. Same as you, probably. Running from something and toward something else. I told you I was not running. You said I said you were not. I noticed the difference. Owen finally looked at her, and their eyes met across the small cabin. A woman does not end up alone and lost on a mountain unless she is desperate to get somewhere. Lily set down her spoon. I am going to Santa Rosa to teach school. I have a contract with the town council. I was supposed to arrive 3 days ago, but the stagecoach broke an axle outside of Las Vegas, and by the time it was repaired, I missed my connection. So yes, I suppose I am desperate, but not in the way you seem to think. A schoolteacher. Owen felt something unexpected stir in his chest, a memory of his own mother teaching him letters by candlelight. Santa Rosa needs one. Most of the children there cannot read worth a damn. Cannot read worth anything, Lily corrected automatically, then flushed. I apologize, professional habit. Owen surprised himself by almost smiling. The map will be ready in a few minutes, but Miss Anderson, I meant what I said about the darkness. Even with a map, these mountains are dangerous at night. There are wolves, bears, and the path includes some steep drop-offs that would be nearly impossible to see by moonlight. I cannot stay here overnight, Lily said firmly. It would be entirely inappropriate. More inappropriate than dying because you fell off a cliff in the dark. Owen finished the map and held it out to her. I have a lean-to out back where I store firewood. I can sleep there. You take the cabin. Lily stood, taking the map from him. Their fingers brushed, and Owen felt a jolt run through him like lightning. From the way her eyes widened, she felt it too. She stepped back quickly, clutching the bark map to her chest. I should go, she said. I can make good time if I hurry. You will break your neck if you hurry on that path. That is my concern, not yours, Mr. Prescott. But even as she said it, Lily looked toward the door where the afternoon light was already beginning to slant golden toward evening. Owen moved to block her path, though he stayed a respectful distance away. I have not spoken to another human being in near 3 months. I know I am rough and probably frightening to a woman like you, but I swear on my mother's grave I will not harm you. Stay until dawn. The path down is dangerous enough in daylight. Lily studied him for a long moment, and Owen had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing straight through to all the broken parts he had tried to bury up here in the wilderness. Finally, she nodded. Until dawn, she agreed, but I insist you take the cabin. I will be perfectly fine in the lean-to. Not a chance in hell. Owen softened his tone. Please, Miss Anderson, let me do this one decent thing. God knows I have not done many lately. Something in his words made her relent. She nodded again and moved back to the chair, setting the map carefully on the table. Owen busied himself with practical matters, showing her where the water barrel was, where he kept his limited supply of food, and how to bar the door from the inside. He gathered a bedroll and an extra blanket, then paused at the door. There is a rifle on the rack if you need it, though I doubt you will. The animals up here know to stay clear of the cabin. He hesitated. Thank you for letting me help. I had forgotten what it feels like to be useful to someone. Before Lily could respond, Owen stepped out into the cooling evening air and closed the door behind him. He stood on the porch for a moment, listening to her move around inside, then headed to the lean to where he kept his winter firewood stacked against the coming cold. It was not the most comfortable place to sleep, but he had done worse. Besides, he doubted he would sleep much anyway. Having another person so close, even separated by log walls, was making his skin feel too tight. Owen spread his bedroll on the ground and sat down, staring out at the mountains he had made his home. The truth was, he had come up here after his wife died, unable to bear the pitying looks from the folks in Santa Rosa, who had watched him bury Sarah and their stillborn daughter on the same cold February day. He had been 26 then, and the grief had been so enormous it felt like it would crush him into nothing. So he ran, up into these mountains where no one could see him fall apart. 8 years later, he was still here, still running in a way, though the sharp edges of grief had worn down to a dull ache he carried like an old scar. He hunted, he trapped, he sold furs and venison in town when he needed supplies, and he spoke to no one more than absolutely necessary. It was a half-life, he knew, but it was safe. Feeling nothing meant never risking that kind of pain again. Except now there was a woman in his cabin, a schoolteacher with green eyes and an iron will, and Owen could feel something cracking open inside his chest, something he had thought was sealed forever. Inside the cabin, Lily barred the door as Owen had shown her, then leaned against it with her eyes closed. Her heart was racing, and not entirely from the fear and exhaustion of her ordeal. There was something about Owen Prescott that unsettled her in ways she could not quite name. He was rough and wild-looking, yes, but beneath that exterior, she had glimpsed something achingly lonely and profoundly sad. She moved around the small space, studying it in the fading light. The cabin was spare but clean, with none of the filth she might have expected from a man living alone in the wilderness. There was a narrow bed in one corner with a real mattress stuffed with what smelled like pine needles and grass. A fireplace dominated one wall, and the furniture consisted of the table, one chair, a workbench, and some shelves holding supplies. Furs and hides hung on one wall, and there were books, actual books, stacked carefully on a shelf above the bed. Lily moved closer to read the spines. Shakespeare, Dickens, Whitman, and several others worn from reading. So Owen Prescott was an educated man, or at least a reading one. The discovery made her feel marginally better about having accepted his hospitality. She pulled down a volume of Whitman's poetry and found an inscription on the inside cover. To Owen, may you always find beauty in words. Love, Mother. She set the book back carefully, feeling like she had intruded on something private. The light was nearly gone now, so Lily lit the oil lamp on the table and prepared for a long night. She was exhausted, but her mind would not settle. She kept thinking about the man outside in the lean-to, about the way his eyes had looked when he mentioned his mother, about the rough gentleness of his hands when he had given her the water. Sleep came eventually, though it was restless and filled with strange dreams of mountains and dark bearded men with kind eyes. Owen did not sleep at all. He lay in his bedroll listening to the night sounds of the forest, to the distant cry of a wolf, to the rustle of small creatures in the underbrush. Mostly, he listened to the silence from the cabin and imagined Lily Anderson sleeping in his bed, and felt like the worst kind of fool for thinking about her at all. Dawn came cold and bright, and Owen rose stiff from his uncomfortable night on the ground. He heard movement from the cabin and waited, giving Lily time to make herself presentable before he approached. Finally, he knocked softly on the door. "Miss Anderson, I thought I might make breakfast before you head down the mountain." The door opened, and Lily stood there looking tired but determined. Her hair was braided neatly now, and she had done her best to brush the dust from her dress. "That is kind of you, Mr. Prescott, though I should leave soon if I am to reach Santa Rosa by midday." "It will take you at least 4 hours with that map, probably closer to 5 if you are being careful. You need food in you before you start." Owen moved past her to the fireplace, where he began preparing a simple breakfast of cornmeal mush and the last of his bacon. As he worked, he was aware of her watching him. "You mentioned your mother last night," Lily said quietly. "Is she the one who taught you to read?" Owen nodded, stirring the pot. She was a schoolteacher herself back in Missouri. My father was a farmer who never saw much use in books, but Ma insisted I learn. She said education was the one thing no one could ever take from you. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. Owen served the food onto tin plates. She died when I was 16. Cholera took her in half the town that summer. I am sorry. Lily accepted the plate and sat at the table. My mother died when I was young too, typhoid fever. They ate in comfortable silence, and Owen found himself not wanting the meal to end. When they finally finished, he walked Lily out to the porch where the morning sun was just beginning to warm the mountain air. She held the bark map carefully in her hands. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Prescott," she said formally. "You may very well have saved my life. Just follow the map and watch your footing on the steep parts." Owen wanted to say more, wanted to ask if he might call on her in town sometime, but the words stuck in his throat. What would a refined schoolteacher want with a mountain hermit? Lily started down the path, then turned back. "If you ever come to Santa Rosa, please visit the schoolhouse. I would like to repay your hospitality with a proper meal." "I will keep that in mind." Owen watched her disappear into the trees and felt the loneliness settle back over him like a familiar coat. He told himself it was better this way, that he was meant to be alone, but the words rang hollow even in his own mind. The next 2 weeks passed slowly for Owen. He tried to fall back into his usual routines of hunting and trapping, but his thoughts kept drifting to green eyes and the sound of Lily's voice correcting his grammar. He found himself picking up the Whitman poems she had looked at, reading them and wondering what she would think of certain passages. It was maddening and uncomfortable, and he told himself a dozen times a day to forget about her. On the 15th day, Owen woke to find himself packing a bag with furs to sell in Santa Rosa. He told himself he needed supplies, that it had nothing to do with a certain schoolteacher, but he knew he was lying. By mid-morning, he was on the trail down the mountain, his heart beating faster than the exertion warranted. Santa Rosa was a growing town of about 300 people, built around the railroad depot and a natural spring that gave the town its name. Owen usually avoided the main street, conducting his business quickly at the trading post and leaving, but today he found his feet carrying him toward the schoolhouse at the edge of town. It was a simple wooden building painted white, with real glass windows and a small bell tower. Through the open windows, Owen could hear Lily's voice leading a group of children in a spelling lesson. He stood outside feeling foolish, unsure what he was even doing there. "Can I help you?" A woman's voice made him turn. She was older, probably in her 50s, with graying hair and a stern expression. "I was just passing by," Owen said, knowing how weak it sounded. "You must be Owen Prescott. Lily mentioned you might visit." The woman's expression softened slightly. "I am Margaret Porter. My husband runs the trading post. Lily boards with us." She made it to town safely then. She did, though she arrived a full 4 days late and had to apologize profusely to the town council. Margaret studied him with sharp eyes. "She spoke very highly of you. Said you were a gentleman despite living like a wild man on the mountain." Owen felt heat rise to his face. "I just gave her directions, and shelter and food and your own bed while you slept outside." Margaret's expression warmed further. "That is not nothing, Mr. Prescott. School lets out in about an hour. Why do not you wait at the trading post? I will make sure Lily knows you are in town." Before Owen could argue, Margaret had swept away down the street. He stood there another moment, then headed reluctantly toward the trading post. The owner, a balding man named Henry Porter, greeted him with unusual enthusiasm. "Prescott, good to see you. Margaret mentioned you might be coming by. Let me take a look at those furs." The business was conducted efficiently, and Owen found himself with more money than he had expected. Henry kept up a steady stream of conversation that Owen mostly ignored, his ears straining for the sound of the school bell. When it finally rang, his whole body tensed. "She will be along shortly," Henry said with amusement. "My wife is not subtle, but she is effective." "I do not know what you mean." "Of course you do not," Henry chuckled. "It is good to see you taking an interest in town life again, Owen. It has been too long." Before Owen could respond, the door opened and Lily walked in. She had changed from the bedraggled traveler of 2 weeks ago into a proper schoolteacher in a fresh green dress that matched her eyes, her dark hair pinned up neatly. When she saw Owen, her face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Mr. Prescott, I had hoped you might visit. I had business in town." Owen felt awkward and oversized in the neat little trading post. "I wanted to make sure you arrived safely. Thanks to your excellent map, I did." Lily moved closer, lowering her voice. "Though I confess I was hoping you might call for reasons beyond checking on my welfare. I meant what I said about owing you a meal. You do not owe me anything. Then perhaps I simply want to share a meal with you." Lily glanced at Margaret, who was watching from behind the counter with barely concealed interest. "Mrs. Porter makes a wonderful pot roast on Sunday evenings. Would you join us this week?" Owen knew he should say no, knew he should take his supplies and disappear back up the mountain where it was safe, but instead he heard himself say, "I would like that." Lily's smile could have lit the whole territory. "Wonderful. Sunday at 6 o'clock. The house is the blue one just past the church." Owen managed to nod and make his escape before he could do something foolish like stare at her all afternoon. As he headed back up the mountain trail, he felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. It took him half the journey to recognize it as hope, and the recognition terrified him. Sunday arrived with agonizing slowness. Owen spent the intervening days trying to talk himself out of going, reminding himself of all the reasons he had fled human companionship in the first place. But when Sunday morning dawned, he found himself heating water to wash properly for the first time in months, trimming his beard with his hunting knife, and putting on his least worn shirt. The ride down the mountain felt longer than usual, and by the time Owen reached the blue house past the church, his nerves were stretched tight. He almost turned back 3 times before finally forcing himself to tie his horse to the fence post and walk up to the front door. Margaret answered his knock with a knowing smile. "Mr. Prescott, right on time. Please come in." The house was warm and filled with the smell of roasting meat and fresh bread. It was painfully domestic, and Owen felt his chest constrict with memories of the home he had once shared with Sarah. But then Lily appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron, and the memories faded under the warmth of her smile. "I am so glad you came," she said. "Please sit down. Dinner is almost ready." The meal was excellent, and the company was surprisingly easy. Henry and Margaret kept up most of the conversation, asking Owen about life on the mountain in a way that felt genuinely interested rather than pitying. Lily added comments here and there, and Owen found himself actually talking, telling stories about the wildlife he encountered and the changing seasons in the high country. After dinner, Margaret shooed them out to the front porch while she and Henry cleaned up. Lily sat on the porch swing and Owen took the chair across from her, watching the sun set over the town. "This was nice," Lily said softly. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting me." Owen hesitated, then added, "I have not sat down to a meal with people in a long time." I had forgotten what it was like. "Why did you leave?" Lily asked. "If you do not mind me asking. Margaret mentioned you used to live in town." Owen was quiet for a long moment, debating how much to share. Finally, he said, "I had a wife, Sarah. We married young, were excited to start a family." But when her time came, nothing went right. We lost both her and the baby. That was 8 years ago." Lily's hand moved as if to touch his, then stopped. "I am so sorry, Owen. I could not stay in town after that. Everywhere I looked, I saw her. Every person who looked at me with pity made it worse. So I went up the mountain and stayed there." He met her eyes. "Until a lost schoolteacher knocked on my door asking for directions. And you gave me so much more than that." Lily was quiet for a moment, then said, "I understand wanting to run. After my mother died, my father could barely look at me. I reminded him too much of her. He sent me to boarding school when I was 12, and I have been on my own ever since. Teaching gave me purpose, but I was lonely too." "Was?" Owen caught the past tense. Lily smiled. "I have found that Santa Rosa has unexpected treasures, not the least of which is a mountain man who reads Whitman and gives up his bed for strangers." They talked until the stars came out, sharing stories of their pasts and their hopes for the future. When Owen finally rose to leave, Lily walked him to his horse. "Will you come back?" she asked. "I teach the children twice a week about natural history, but I know very little about the actual wilderness. Perhaps you could visit the class sometime and share your knowledge." "You want me to talk to a room full of children?" "I want you to visit town more often," Lily said quietly. "And if helping with the school gives you an excuse to do so, then I will happily use it." Owen looked down at her in the moonlight and felt the last of his carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. "I will come back," he promised. "Not for the school, for you." Lily's breath caught, and for a moment, Owen thought she might step closer. But then the front door opened and Margaret called out a good night. The moment passed, but the promise hung in the air between them. Owen rode back up the mountain that night feeling like a different man than the one who had descended it that morning. The loneliness that had been his constant companion for 8 years felt lighter somehow, less suffocating. When he reached his cabin and lay down in his bed, he could smell the faint scent of lavender that lingered from when Lily had slept there. And he finally let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, he could learn to live again. The following weeks fell into a pattern that felt both terrifying and wonderful. Owen came down from the mountain every few days, always with some excuse about needing supplies or bringing game to trade, but everyone knew he was really there to see Lily. They would walk together through the town in the evenings, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes he would visit her classroom, and the children were fascinated by his stories of tracking animals and surviving mountain winters. It was during one of these classroom visits that Owen realized he was falling in love. He was showing the children how to read animal tracks in the dirt outside the schoolhouse when he looked up and caught Lily watching him with such tenderness in her expression that his heart nearly stopped. When their eyes met, she did not look away, and Owen knew with absolute certainty that she felt the same way. That evening, he asked if she would take a walk with him outside of town, and she agreed without hesitation. They followed a path that led to a small grove of cottonwood trees beside a creek, and there, with the sound of running water and the fading light painting everything gold, Owen finally found the courage to speak his heart. "Lily, I need to tell you something, and I am probably going to make a mess of it because I have not said these words in 8 years." He took a deep breath. "When you knocked on my door that day, I was barely living. I was just existing, waiting for nothing, feeling nothing. But you changed that. These past weeks with you have reminded me what it feels like to be alive, to look forward to tomorrow, to hope for more than just getting through another day." Lily's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Owen, let me finish before I lose my nerve." He stepped closer, taking her hands in his much larger ones. "I know I am rough and unsocialized, and I live on a mountain like some kind of wild creature, but I am asking you to take a chance on me anyway. I am asking if you might consider letting me court you properly, with the intention of marriage if you will have me." "If I will have you," Lily laughed through her tears. "Owen Prescott, I started falling in love with you the moment you gave me your bed and slept outside to make me feel safe. You are the kindest, most honorable man I have ever met, and yes, I want you to court me. I want all of it." Owen felt joy surge through him so powerfully he thought he might shout. Instead, he pulled Lily closer, and when she tilted her face up to his, he kissed her for the first time. It was gentle and tentative at first, then deeper as 8 years of loneliness and isolation fell away, replaced by the warm reality of another person's touch, another person's love. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Lily rested her forehead against his chest. "I have a confession," she said. "When I got lost that day, I had already passed 2 other cabins. I could have stopped at either one, but something told me to keep going. When I saw your cabin, I knew it was where I was supposed to be." "Fate," Owen smiled against her hair. "Or providence, or blind luck. I do not care what you call it. I am just grateful for it." They stood there as the last light faded, holding each other and making plans for a future neither of them had dared dream of just weeks before. Owen would come down from the mountain more often, would begin the slow process of rejoining the human race. Lily would be patient with him, would understand when he needed to retreat to the wilderness to clear his head. Together, they would build something new, something that honored their pasts while reaching toward a better future. The courtship that followed was the talk of Santa Rosa. The reclusive mountain man and the new schoolteacher made an unlikely pair, but anyone who saw them together could not doubt the genuine affection between them. Owen began taking on work in town, helping with building projects and offering his skills as a tracker and hunter. He slowly reconnected with people he had known before Sarah's death, making his peace with his past. Lily continued to teach, but she also began spending weekends at Owen's mountain cabin, much to Margaret's initial consternation, until Owen made it clear his intentions were entirely honorable. Lily loved the cabin and the wilderness around it, finding peace in the silence and beauty of the high country. Owen taught her to track animals, to read the weather in the clouds, to find her way by the stars. In turn, she read to him from her books, taught him new recipes, and filled his isolated existence with laughter and light. 3 months after their first kiss, on a brilliant October day when the aspens had turned gold and the air smelled of coming snow, Owen proposed properly. He took Lily to a meadow high on the mountain where the wildflowers still bloomed in defiance of the season. And there, he gave her a ring he had traded for using his entire winter's worth of furs. It was a simple gold band with a small diamond, but Lily cried when she saw it and said yes before he even finished asking the question. They were married in November in the small church in Santa Rosa, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Owen wore new clothes that felt strange and confining, but the discomfort faded when he saw Lily walking toward him in a simple white dress, her dark hair crowned with late-season flowers. Margaret stood up with Lily, and Henry stood with Owen, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Owen kissed his bride with a joy he had never thought to feel again. The wedding celebration lasted well into the night, with food and dancing and toasts to the happy couple. But eventually, Owen and Lily escaped to the cabin on the mountain, to the home they would share together. As they stood on the porch looking out at the star-filled sky, Lily leaned against her new husband and sighed with contentment. "I only wanted directions," she said with a smile in her voice. "And you gave me a map to your heart instead." "Best directions I ever gave," Owen replied, wrapping his arms around her, "though I think you found your way there on your own. We found our way together. Lily turned in his arms to face him. "Promise me something, Owen. Promise me we will always be this honest with each other, this open. I never want to lose what we have. I promise." Owen kissed her forehead. "You saved me, Lily. When you knocked on that door, I was drowning in grief and isolation. You threw me a lifeline without even knowing it. I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for that, and for you." They went inside together, closing the door on the cold November night. The cabin that had been a refuge for loneliness became a sanctuary for love, and Owen marveled at how one chance encounter could change the entire course of a life. Their first winter together was hard in the way that mountain winters always are, with deep snow and bitter cold that sometimes kept them isolated for weeks at a time. But the hardship only brought them closer. Owen taught Lily the skills she needed to survive in the wilderness, and she proved to be an apt student. They spent long evenings by the fire, reading aloud to each other, making plans for the spring, learning the rhythms of married life. When spring finally came, melting the snow and coaxing the wildflowers from the ground, Lily discovered she was pregnant. The news brought Owen to his knees, literally. He knelt before his wife with his head against her still flat belly and wept, terrified and thrilled in equal measure. The memory of losing Sarah and their baby was still sharp enough to cut, and he could not help his fear. Lily understood. She held him and let him cry, then made him look at her. "I am not Sarah," she said gently but firmly, "and this baby is not that baby. What happened to them was a tragedy, but it does not mean the same thing will happen to us. You have to trust that we will be all right. What if I lose you?" Owen's voice was raw. "Lily, I could not survive that again. You will not lose me. I am healthy and strong, and we will get the doctor from Santa Rosa when my time comes. We will do everything right." She cupped his face in her hands. "But Owen, you have to let yourself be happy about this. Our baby deserves a father who is not afraid to love them." Her words pierced through his fear, and Owen nodded slowly. She was right. He could not let the past steal the joy of the present. So he made himself focus on the wonder of it, on the miracle of new life, and slowly his fear transformed into cautious excitement. As Lily's pregnancy progressed, they spent more time in Santa Rosa, where she could be closer to the doctor. Owen took on more work in town, building up savings for the baby's arrival. They moved into a small house on the edge of town, though they kept the mountain cabin for summer visits. The house needed work, but Owen poured his energy into making it perfect for his growing family, adding a nursery and reinforcing the walls against the winter cold. The women of Santa Rosa rallied around Lily, especially Margaret, who became like a mother to her. They threw a party where they brought handmade baby clothes and blankets, gave advice both solicited and not, and made Lily feel truly part of the community. Owen watched his wife bloom under the attention and felt grateful that she would not have to face motherhood alone as Sarah had. In late November, a year after their wedding, Lily went into labor. Owen paced the front room of their house while Margaret and the doctor attended to his wife, every cry from the bedroom sending ice through his veins. He prayed harder than he had ever prayed in his life, bargaining with God, promising anything if only Lily and the baby would be all right. The labor lasted through the night and into the next morning, longer than Owen thought could possibly be safe, but finally the doctor emerged with a tired smile. "You have a son," he said, "and your wife is tired but healthy. You can go in now." Owen burst into the bedroom to find Lily pale and exhausted but smiling, a small bundle cradled in her arms. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Owen approached slowly, afraid he might shatter the moment with his rough presence, but when Lily pulled back the blanket to reveal a tiny red face and dark hair, something in his chest broke open. He reached out with one tentative finger to touch the baby's impossibly small hand, and when tiny fingers closed around his, Owen felt tears stream down his face. "He is perfect," Owen whispered. "You are perfect. Lily, I do not have words for what I am feeling right now." "Then do not try to find them." Lily looked up at him with exhausted joy. "Just feel it. We are a family now, Owen. A real family." They named the baby Thomas after Owen's father, with the middle name of James for Lily's grandfather. Little Thomas was a good baby, healthy and strong, and Owen fell completely in love with his son in a way that was both terrifying and transformative. Every milestone, from the first smile to the first time Thomas rolled over, felt like a miracle. As Thomas grew, so did Owen's confidence as a father. The fear that had gripped him during the pregnancy faded under the reality of daily life with an infant. He learned to change diapers and rock the baby to sleep, to walk the floor at night when Thomas was fussy, to make funny faces that earned him gummy smiles. Lily watched her rough mountain man become the gentlest of fathers, and her love for him deepened even more. They settled into family life with surprising ease. Owen continued to work in town, taking on jobs as a guide for hunting parties and working construction during the busy summer months. Lily returned to teaching part-time once Thomas was old enough, with Margaret watching the baby during school hours. The mountain cabin became their summer retreat, a place where Thomas could learn to love the wilderness as his father did. 2 years after Thomas was born, Lily became pregnant again. This time, Owen's reaction was pure joy with only a shadow of the old fear. He had learned to trust in their future together, to believe that happiness could last. Their daughter was born on a perfect spring day, arriving so quickly that Owen barely had time to fetch the doctor. They named her Emma Rose, and she had her mother's green eyes and a temperament as fierce as a mountain lion. Life was full and busy and sometimes chaotic, but it was also rich with love and laughter. Owen marveled regularly at how far he had come from the broken man who had hidden on the mountain, content to exist but not truly live. Lily had given him back his life, had shown him that healing was possible, that love could come again even after devastating loss. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Owen took Lily back to the meadow where he had proposed. They left the children with Margaret for the night and rode up the mountain trail together, arriving at sunset when the light painted everything gold and pink. The wildflowers were in full bloom and the air was sweet with their scent. "You remember what I said when I proposed?" Owen asked, taking Lily's hands in his. "You said you were probably going to make a mess of it," Lily replied with a smile. "But you did not. It was perfect. I told you that you reminded me what it felt like to be alive, to hope for tomorrow." Owen pulled her closer. 5 years later, that is still true, only more so. You did not just save me, Lily. You gave me a reason to be saved. You and Thomas and Emma are my whole world, and I thank God every day for the lost schoolteacher who knocked on my door asking for directions. And I thank God for the mountain man who gave me so much more than a map. Lily stood on her toes to kiss him. "I love you, Owen Prescott. I love the life we have built together. I love watching you be a father to our children. I love that we still come back to this place, to where we first admitted what we felt. I love you too." Owen kissed her again, deeper this time, more than I have words to say. They stayed in the meadow until the stars came out, holding each other and talking about their dreams for the future. They wanted more children, wanted to eventually move back to the mountain cabin once the kids were older, wanted to grow old together watching grandchildren play in the meadow. It was a beautiful future, one neither of them had dared imagine before they found each other. The years that followed were good ones, full of the normal joys and challenges of raising a family. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the wilderness as much as his father did. Emma was wild and fearless, climbing trees before she could properly walk and giving her parents heart palpitations on a regular basis. When Thomas was 7 and Emma was 5, Lily became pregnant once more, and this time they had another son who they named Samuel Owen. Owen's heart felt so full sometimes he thought it might burst. 3 healthy children, a wife he adored, a community that had welcomed him back after years of self-imposed exile. The cabin on the mountain was still there, still their refuge when they needed peace and quiet, but their real home was in Santa Rosa, in the life they had built together. Lily continued teaching, becoming one of the most respected educators in the territory. Owen became known as the best tracker and guide in northern New Mexico, teaching his skills to others and passing on the wilderness knowledge his years of isolation had given him. They were partners in every sense, supporting each other's dreams while building their family. When Thomas turned 15, he asked his father to teach him to live on the mountain the way Owen had. It was 1897, and the world was changing fast. The wild frontier was becoming more civilized, the railroad bringing more people and more development. But the mountains were still wild, still beautiful, and Thomas wanted to know them the way his father did. Owen agreed, and they spent a summer at the cabin, just the two of them. It was one of the best experiences of Owen's life, passing on everything he knew to his eldest son. They hunted and trapped, read together in the evenings, talked about life and love and what it meant to be a man. When they came down from the mountain in September, Thomas was confident and capable, and Owen felt like he had given his son a gift that would last a lifetime. Emma, never one to be left out, demanded her own mountain summer when she turned 13. Owen had his doubts about taking his wild daughter into the wilderness for months, but Lily insisted Emma needed it, and she was right. Emma thrived on the mountain, proving to be even more skilled at tracking than Thomas. She also had a gift for identifying plants and their uses, something Owen had never been particularly good at. Father and daughter returned from their summer closer than ever, and Emma announced she wanted to become a naturalist, to study and document the wild places before they disappeared. Samuel, the youngest, was content with shorter visits to the cabin, preferring books and learning to the rough outdoor life. He was most like his mother, happiest when teaching or learning something new. Owen loved him just as fiercely as the other two, proud of each of his children for the unique people they were becoming. The turn of the century brought changes to Santa Rosa and the whole territory. New Mexico was moving toward statehood, the town was growing, and the world felt simultaneously bigger and smaller. But through all the changes, Owen and Lily's love remained constant. They had weathered storms both literal and metaphorical, had raised 3 children together, had built a life that honored both their pasts and their present. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Owen took Lily back to the cabin on the mountain. Their children were grown or nearly so, Thomas at 20, Emma at 18, and Samuel at 13. The kids stayed in town, giving their parents a week alone in the place where their story had truly begun. "I have been thinking," Owen said as they sat on the porch watching the sunset on their first evening there. "When Samuel finishes school, what would you think about moving back up here permanently? We could still go to town regularly, but this could be our home again." Lily considered this, then nodded slowly. "I think I would like that. I have loved our life in Santa Rosa, but this place has always felt magical to me. It is where I found you, where we fell in love. It feels right to come back here for the next chapter." "The next chapter?" Owen smiled. "I like the sound of that, though I am not sure how many chapters we have left." "Nonsense. We are only in our 40s. We have decades ahead of us. Lily leaned against his shoulder. Decades to fill with grandchildren visiting the mountain, with quiet evenings by the fire, with waking up next to you every morning. I cannot wait. Owen wrapped his arm around his wife, marveling as he always did at how perfectly she fit against his side. You know, when you knocked on my door that day 20 years ago, I was sure my life was over. I thought I had already lived all the good parts, and all that was left was to endure until I died. And now I know that life is not about what happens to you. It is about what you do with what happens. Sarah's death nearly destroyed me, but meeting you saved me. Our children, this life we have built, it is all because you were brave enough to knock on a stranger's door and I was desperate enough to answer. Lily turned to look at him, tears glistening in her eyes. I was not seeking anything but directions that day. I had no idea I would find my whole future. I gave you a map to your future, Owen said with a smile, though it turned out to be a map to my heart, the best map I ever followed. Lily kissed him softly. And I would follow it again in a heartbeat, every wrong turn and stumbling step, because they all led me here. To you, to us. They sat together as the stars came out, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from their broken pieces. The mountain was silent around them, bearing witness to their love as it had from the beginning. True to their plan, Owen and Lily moved back to the mountain cabin when Samuel turned 16 and went off to university in Santa Fe. By then, Thomas had married and was expecting his first child, and Emma was working with a group of naturalists documenting the flora and fauna of the territory before it became a state. Their children were launched into their own lives, and Owen and Lily were free to return to the place where their love story had begun. They expanded the cabin, adding rooms and modern conveniences that made it comfortable without losing its rustic charm. Owen still hunted and trapped, though now more for pleasure than necessity. Lily started a small school for the few children whose families lived in the scattered ranches around the mountain, teaching them reading and writing and arithmetic, just as she had in town. Thomas's daughter, their first grandchild, was born in the spring of 1904, and they named her Lily Sarah, honoring both her grandmother and the great aunt she would never meet. Owen held his granddaughter for the first time and wept openly, something he no longer felt ashamed to do. The cycle of life felt complete somehow, the past and present united in the small person nestled in his arms. More grandchildren followed as the years passed. Thomas and his wife had 4 children total. Emma married a fellow naturalist and had 2 daughters who were as wild and fearless as their mother. Even Samuel eventually settled down with a teacher he met at university, and they had a son and a daughter. Owen and Lily's cabin became a gathering place for the extended family, with children and grandchildren visiting regularly to experience the mountain life and hear stories of how their grandparents had met. The story of the lost schoolteacher and the mountain man became family legend, told and retold with embellishments and laughter. But the core of it remained true. A chance encounter that changed 2 lives completely, a knock on a door that opened both their futures. Owen and Lily grew old together on their mountain, their hair turning gray and their steps becoming slower, but their love never dimming. They still took walks through the meadow where Owen had proposed, still sat on the porch in the evenings talking about everything and nothing, still read poetry to each other by the fireplace. After 30 years of marriage, they could finish each other's sentences and communicate with just a look, but they never stopped talking, never stopped sharing their thoughts and dreams. When New Mexico finally achieved statehood in 1912, Owen was 60 years old and Lily was 57. They celebrated in Santa Rosa with their children and grandchildren, marveling at how much the world had changed since they first met. The wild frontier of their youth was becoming history, but the mountains remained, constant and beautiful. "You have any regrets?" Lily asked Owen one evening as they sat watching the sunset from their porch. "About the years you lost to grief before I found you." Owen thought about it carefully before answering. "I regret that Sarah and the baby died. I will always regret that. But I do not regret the time I spent on this mountain, even the lonely years. I think I needed that time to heal enough that I could let you in when you appeared. If you had knocked on my door a year earlier, I might not have been ready. The timing was exactly what it needed to be." "I believe that," Lily said softly. "Everything in my life, all the hard parts and the lonely times, they were preparing me for you too, for us." They fell silent, comfortable in each other's presence as only people who have spent decades together can be. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, and Owen felt a deep sense of contentment settle over him. "I am a lucky man," he said quietly. "Not many people get a second chance at happiness. You gave me that, Lily. You and our children and this life we have built. I am so damn lucky." "We are both lucky," Lily corrected. "I found exactly what I needed when I climbed this mountain looking for directions. I found home." The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as all lives do. They lost friends to age and illness, watched the world transform in ways they could never have imagined in their youth. But through it all, Owen and Lily remained each other's constant, their love the foundation on which everything else was built. When Owen turned 70, his children threw him a surprise birthday party at the cabin, filling it with 3 generations of family. He stood on his porch looking at all the people there, the children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Lily slipped her hand into his and he squeezed it gently. "Not bad for a mountain hermit," she whispered. "Not bad for a lost schoolteacher," he replied with a smile. That evening, after everyone had gone home or to bed, Owen and Lily climbed to the meadow one more time. It was harder now, their joints stiff and their breathing labored, but they made it. They sat in the wildflowers under the stars, and Owen pulled a worn piece of birch bark from his pocket. "You remember this?" he asked. Lily took it carefully, recognizing the map Owen had drawn for her more than 35 years earlier. "You kept it. I found it in your things years ago and kept it safe. It seemed important, this map that started everything." Owen traced the faded lines with his finger. "I told you it would lead you to Santa Rosa, but really it led you to me." "It led us to each other," Lily said, her eyes bright with tears. "And what a journey it has been." They sat together under the stars, 2 people who had found each other through chance and choice and sheer determination. The map that had once shown the way down a mountain had become a map of their lives together, marking all the places they had been and the love that had guided them. As the night deepened and the air grew cold, they made their way slowly back down to the cabin, to the bed they had shared for decades, to the life they had built from loneliness and loss and unexpected love. And in the morning, they woke together as they had for more than 35 years, grateful for another day, another chance to love each other. Owen Prescott lived to be 82 years old, passing peacefully in his sleep on a winter night with Lily beside him. She held his hand as he took his last breath, whispering words of love and gratitude for the life they had shared. Though her heart broke at his loss, she did not regret a single moment of their time together. Lily lived another 5 years after Owen's death, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, telling stories of the mountain man who had given her directions and stolen her heart. She never remarried, saying once that she had found her great love and nothing could replace that. When she died at 84, it was in the cabin on the mountain, in the bed she had shared with Owen, surrounded by family and at peace. They were buried side by side in the Santa Rosa Cemetery, their headstones simple but meaningful. Owen's read, "Mountain man, husband, father." He found his way home. Lily's read, "Teacher, wife, mother." She found more than directions. Their children kept the cabin on the mountain, using it as a family gathering place and preserving it as a memorial to their parents' love story. The meadow where Owen proposed became a favorite spot for family weddings and celebrations. And the story of how Owen and Lily met, the lost schoolteacher and the lonely mountain man, was passed down through the generations as a reminder that love can find you in the most unexpected places, that it is never too late to heal, and that sometimes the best directions lead you not to where you thought you were going, but exactly where you need to be. The birch bark map, carefully preserved behind glass, hung in the cabin for decades, a tangible reminder of the day that changed everything. And though both Owen and Lily were long gone, their love story lived on in the hearts and memories of everyone who had known them, a testament to the transforming power of love and the courage it takes to open your heart after loss. In the end, Lily had knocked seeking only directions, but Owen had given her so much more. He had given her his heart, his life, his future. And in return, she had given him back himself, whole and healed and ready to live again. It was, by any measure, a love story for the ages.